Hi, this is Daniel Hanzelka, and welcome to the Ultimate Advisor Show, the only show of its kind where you learn how to combine the skill set and the mindset to skyrocket your financial practice. Today, we have a special show for you. Dr. Jack will be asking me questions today. So welcome to the show, Dr. Jack.
It's my pleasure again, and I'm really looking forward, Daniel, to asking you questions because you know what? You're such an unselfish person. In the last recording, it was all about me and what I can contribute to your listeners. So I really am excited for them to learn about the special skill sets that you have and what you bring to the table for all financial professionals.
All right, that's awesome.
So you're ready for the first question? You ready for me to hammer you with some questions?
I'm ready.
Okay. Now, I know that you were a certified financial planner, and I'm just curious to know how you transitioned from that to becoming a business coach, helping advisors with lead generation and marketing. What led to that transition?
It took several years to get to that point. I guess now for the last 7 years, I think almost 8 years, I have started to study marketing. Because one of the biggest challenges that I had when I was a financial advisor was always, how do I get in front of my ideal client? How do I get those conversations? How do I actually go and generate leads? And just through the experiences, first, what I thought was, well, you know what, if I become a certified financial planner, then that's going to change everything. People are just going to be coming to me and asking me questions and wanting my help. Well, unfortunately, I did get my certified financial planner designation. And it kind of the next morning, I woke up thinking, hello world. And then nothing really happened. And as I share this story with a lot of other advisors, they kind of feel the same thing. I kind of call it the if this, then that syndrome. We're always thinking that, well, once I get this, I'm going to have a certain results. Well, Jack, that didn't happen. Then I thought, hey, if I go out there and write a book, okay, I'm going to become the expert and everything's going to change. So I hired a publisher, spent several thousands of dollars on writing a book. And before I actually got to go and publish the book, I actually exited the whole industry. But what I was starting to see that there is a lot more that's really involved in really becoming that expert or an authority. Book is a great way of doing it, and writing a book certainly puts you out there, but there's a lot more. And what I've started to learn, that there's really what I would call, the 5 1s or the 5 M's, as I call them, that somebody needs to know to really become the expert in the industry. And that's to get really clear on who the ideal client is, get really clear on, what is the solution that they're really offering, what is the message, what is the conversion mechanism, and also what is the media, how they're going to share that. So how I transitioned from, being an advisor is just realizing that a lot of the struggles and challenges that I've had, there are other individuals that have had it. And because I started studying marketing, started doing a lot of kind of soul searching and finding out why am I doing what I'm doing, I realized that there was a bigger purpose for me. And because I've learned a lot of these skills, I really decided that, I really want to work with financial advisors and help them to, better themselves, better their business, and move beyond and what I would call scale and leverage their business. And really the reason I do what I do is so that I'm the person I wish I had when I was a financial advisor, somebody that can kind of cut through a lot of the misinformation that is out there and just tell me what is it that I need to do to really give me the results.
Right. So you're actually taking a lot of your own experience plus money you've spent studying this and putting that all to use for financial advisors to sort of cut to the bottom line on what they need to do to enhance their practice quickly.
100%. And really at the end of it, what it comes down to, it took me some time. And one of the key things is to really figure out who your market is. It took me several months to really figure that out, sitting down. Even this is what I was telling everybody to do. I remember sitting with my coach and saying, oh, hang on, you mean that I've got to do the same? But when I did that, everything changed because everything becomes so much easier for somebody when they know exactly who the ideal client is, when they can identify exactly what is the solution that they can offer. Because then it just comes down to us putting that message together and putting it in front of them and saying, this is who I work with, this is how I help them. And if you're that person, all you have to do is make the decision, wow, this sounds really interesting, tell me more. And this is really where the engagement comes. And I think, the way that I was told sales in the past was more of a negative thing. Where sales is when you try to convince somebody that they should buy something they don't really need.
Right.
Where, in this whole social media world, we have really moved away from that. We are now more in the world of, you really have to go out there and educate people what it is that you do and put your work out there and really help them to solve the problem they have. And
that's really right on target from my perspective, Daniel, because I know that as a psychologist, and if I'm trying to show people what I can do for them, I'm not trying to sell them on anything. I'm trying to listen first to what their issue is, what they need, and then show them how I can help them resolve that problem. So one of the shows we'll have down the road will be something I call active empathic listening, where I'll teach advisors how to really listen to a prospective client rather than worrying about how they're going to sell them something.
Yes. Well, this brings me, excellent. One of the things that I tell people when it comes down to, I call it a client creation, and we always should be creating clients. All client creation means is you're having conversations with people, because no sale is going to happen without a conversation. Now, that conversation can be through an email or a text. It could be on the phone, could be through a video or a webinar. It doesn't matter how, but a conversation has to happen between two individuals. And often what I find that most people, what they do, and I'm working on an article that I'm going to write, it sounds a little risque. I call it the LinkedIn porn. And what that really means is I get so many invites where people just want to connect with me, and next thing, they're trying to sell me something where they don't really know anything about me. They don't even know if I'm interested in what they have to say and do. And I think this is one of the biggest mistakes that a lot of individuals on LinkedIn do, is that they try to do things way too fast without really finding out what is the individual need.
That's correct. There's a lot of research on that, actually, that if you try to sell yourself too fast, if you're too salesy in your information, it's a turnoff. People say, I've seen it, now I know what this guy's after, and that's the end of the story. But if you legitimately try to get into what is a problem someone has that you have some expertise where you can help them, then you will get them to engage with you so that it's a win-win situation for both of you.
Yeah. And really, when you're now talking about LinkedIn, and again, the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing is LinkedIn is a perfect tool for that. I tell people, you're not going to be able to sell anything over LinkedIn. I mean, maybe once every year, 5 years, you might be able to get that when you make the sale right away because that person was just ready. But again, that person had to be ready. So all really social media is strictly a tool where you get to engage with people and have a conversation. And it becomes very simple because when you can identify who they are, and I kind of use the ideology, idea of, most people, most advisors, when they're out there, they're kind of like fishing on the ocean. They're just hoping to catch something, so they lower their nets, they scrape the bottom of the ocean, and they pull up a whole bunch of stuff. Chances are, out of everything, all the fish they pull, there might be one or two that might be the right, but because they spend so much time processing all the wrong fish, the right ones get away on them.
See, one of the great things about you in the time that I've known you, Daniel, is your use of metaphors that are so perfect and spot on that I was sitting here picturing a fishing boat, with the net dragging up all kinds of junk fish, and there's one gem in there that escapes before they can get it because they didn't do it the right way.
Yeah. And 100%. So, and what I do, and I tell them, well, just imagine this, that LinkedIn has actually already went and sorted all the fish. And once you know who they are, you just have to show up, okay, on the right boat that's only fishing for specific fish, okay, and they're already all sorted out. They're just waiting there for you to start and engage with them and have a conversation.
That's right.
And, I hear a lot of people going to networking events. Again, there is absolutely nothing wrong with networking events, but I always ask, what? I'd rather do all of my fishing for my ideal client, in my office where I can set whenever I'm going to do it. But the biggest key really to that is, and I think, as we were going to be discussing, the mindset is a huge part of it because it has to be done on a consistent basis. Speaking of analogies, this morning I'm talking to a client and I love using this analogy. Most people run their business this way. They're like going, okay, I'm going to work really hard for a short period of time and then I'm going to be okay. It's kind of like saying, I'm going to brush my teeth really hard on Sunday night and then I'm good for the rest of the week. Well, it doesn't really work like that. When it comes down to lead generation, it kind of works the same way. Yet I often see advisors kind of struggling because they're just hoping they're going to run into that one right person.
Right.
Kind of, they scrape the bottom of the ocean and they're hoping to find that one gem, not realizing that that fish is long gone because they spend so much time and effort doing, I don't want to call them the wrong activities, but not really focused activities. And I think that's the biggest challenge.
Yeah, I think when I mentor advisors, and I'm talking really about the mindset and the psychological obstacles that people run into in trying to run their businesses, the thing that I see most often is people get overwhelmed and say the heck with it. They fall back on their old habits because it seems like too much effort to change the way they think. And that's what I'm working on, is to help them remove that barrier, psychological barrier, and not feel like they're overwhelmed. You know what it's like, Daniel? It's like you go to a convention for financial advisors, and most people go there because they get continuing education credit. Otherwise, they wouldn't go, And you sit there and you listen to the first keynote speaker, and you say to yourself, I can never do all those things. And you just tune the person out then, like it's too threatening. He's saying things I could never do, so I'm just going to spin my wheels here, get through this, get my continuing education, and go back to my office and do what I've always done. The reason you wanted me to be with you is because I'm the kind of guy that addresses those issues and says, wait a minute, we're not going to just sweep those under the rug. This is what we have to deal with, so you can listen to messages like Daniel is giving you, for example, without feeling overwhelmed.
Yeah, and I think part of that is, and what you're really talking about, and this is what I help advisors do, is you need to have a strategy for everything. And what you're mentioning there, one of the strategies that I tell advisors, if you're going to a convention or you go to a seminar, okay, if you're sitting there and you're listening to a speaker, and as you're mentioning, everything becomes overwhelming. I think what a lot of advisors do is they get so many great ideas, okay, and they say, I'm going to go and implement everything. It sounds all so great. So that also becomes overwhelming. And as I'm talking, I still have a DVD set of a seminar for financial advisors that I've attended in 2003. And it's sitting on my shelf kind of as a reminder of how many things have we ever got involved in and thinking we have to go and do everything. Yeah. And one of the things that I tell, advisors is, if you go to a seminar, focus on only picking maybe one or two, maybe just only one strategy. And almost as if you hear it first, tune everything else out.
That's wonderful advice. Yeah. That is really wonderful advice. And, when I'm doing a keynote, I'm going to employ that, because when I'm doing a keynote, I'm going to tell people, you don't have to put into practice everything you hear from me. Pick out one or two ideas. That's why the title of my keynote is 3 Actionable Steps. Like, it's only 3. You can do it. Pick out something that you can do right away, and you will enhance yourself. You don't have to do everything in order to enhance yourself. Yeah.
Because, one of the things, and as you mentioned, what I've had, over the last 7-8 years of learning about marketing and spending of, hundreds of thousands of dollars on all of this education, we always have this need of learning new and more stuff. And some of the coaches that I now hire for is not to teach me anything new, but it's to help me implement what I already know. Right. Because even if I've taken the 1% of everything that I know and I was actually out there doing it constantly, I'd have amazing results. And I think often, with Google that coming on kind of on mainstream, we all become that it's all information age. Well, I think information age, it has become where there is so much noise, there's too much information, and it becomes so overwhelming. And for every strategy, there is an opposing strategy that says something completely opposite. And I think this also adds to the stress and frustration and the overwhelm that a lot of advisors are facing. So focusing on that one thing that somebody can go and take away from all this, and maybe even as me and you are having this chat, just that one small thing for people to remember, and using analogy to that, remember that every time you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. And one of the things that I focused and telling people is figure out what is that one thing that you should be saying yes to? What's that one important thing? Because most people say yes to things that don't really help them at whatever they're doing. And it just becomes more confusing. So it becomes more important to learn what you need to say yes to, and what actually, even more important, what you start need to say no to.
I see. So you're really saying that when people open up a new door, they're closing one unconsciously, and they have to be careful. So with that, let me ask you this. From your experience, what separates the average good advisor, say, from a really successful, powerful advisor?
I think really what it comes down to is having the ability to start focusing on what it is that they want, getting very clear on, again, who the ideal target market is, getting very clear on what it is and what is the solution that they're really providing, and really working on it. And again, this is why when we met, the whole idea of the mindset and the skill set comes together, because I've realized that even for me, I can have all of the skill set, but if I don't have the right mindset, it's going to be very difficult to become consistent at it.
Right.
And
so the example of what you're saying is you meet a prospective client. Daniel has, let's talk about an advisor meeting a prospective client.
Yeah.
The advisor may have all kinds of product knowledge and things that will help in the wealth management and the financial planning that that client needs. But if the client doesn't trust the advisor, it's not going anywhere. So how does the client trust the advisor? It's the way the advisor speaks, it's the way the advisor listens, and whether the client perceives that the advisor is genuinely concerned about the well-being of them and their family, or simply trying to sell them and bring on a new client.
It reminds me of something. I was working with an advisor, and their challenge is they could go and build that relationship. They could build the trust, which is all great. And I think a lot of advisors are great at building, the initial trust.
Uh-huh.
But I told them there's two sales you're making. The first, you got to build that trust. The second, though, is have you built the trust enough for them to trust you to lead them to the solution that you're offering? And often this is kind of where the breakdown really happens, is they can build that relationship at the beginning. They're thinking, wow, they were like really impressed by me, everything that I was doing, but they didn't deal with me. How come? And what I find is sometimes when people are able to kind of build that trust, they can build or make that, call it a second sale of, do they trust me enough to actually resolve their problem or the challenge that they really have? And this is where advisors need to really become what I call leaders in what they're doing, and they have to lead their clients. And that's what really advisors, going back to the question, the difference between, the advisor that's really good and great at what they're doing is they're really leaders, and they're leading their ideal clients.
And I think what's been going on lately with fiduciary requirements, I think addresses this, because a lot of clients think that an advisor is just trying to ram something down their throat because of a commission. But if advisors' fee for service, for example, is based on the money they're making for the client, then they're both in the same boat rowing together. You see, it's not like, well, I don't care what happens to you, I just want my commission. Now it's, we're all in this, and I only make money if you make money. So it's obviously in my best interest to do what I think is the right thing for you.
Yeah, and it comes down to that, it comes down to that trust. And I think most advisors that are in the business are there for a reason and purpose. And I love working with advisors that when we sit down and we start to kind of delve down a little bit more, I believe kind of like a doctor, an advisor goes into the business because they want to go and help people. One of the benefits is, and I think the financial industry is a great industry where people can, as advisors can build really great businesses and wealthy businesses. But at the end, I think everybody's really committed to helping that individual and help them to have something different. And often these are the stories, when you're talking about a financial advisor that's really committed to their business and has a really success in their business, is they're really tied into the story, why they're doing what they're doing. Kind of like I shared, why I do what I do is because, I love helping advisors, because I know where they are, I know what they're thinking, I know what they're struggling with, and I can help them, to see things from a different perspective.
Absolutely. There's an advisor that I know who's approaching 70, and I asked him, well, are you considering retirement? He said, I would love to retire. I have plenty of money to retire, but my clients count on me, and they don't have anyone else they trust. And I've tried to bring in other people to take over the practice, but their value proposition isn't what mine is. I can't abandon my clients. So you see, this is the genuine advisor who really cares about what he's doing.
Yeah, Exactly. And it becomes frustrating. And again, my sense is though that part of what he's doing, he still enjoys it. And he loves it. And I think this is where often it comes down to is there's a little bit of that stress and challenge that really comes is, he wants to retire at the same time as he doesn't want to retire. Well, there is a transition. And I mean, obviously it's a matter of finding out what is the right solution for somebody to, to really go and deal with that.
Right. So I think that we've pretty much covered, how you transition, why you transition, how you genuinely care about financial planners and financial advisors to genuinely enhance their business. And, we're both in the same situation here because I don't have to be working with advisors to make a living. I choose to do this because I found an area where people really needed help. As you mentioned in our last show, I started as a sports psychologist working with elite athletes. I now pivoted it to advisors so I can help them all become elite and ultimate and the best they can be. And that brings pleasure to me because I know how to do it. And you know exactly what you're doing. You're just itching for the opportunity to share all this knowledge that you've developed and paid for with advisors because it's something you can see the other side of the mountain and the success that they'll have.
And often it's a lot simpler than we tend to think. And again, this is what I'm looking at. Put it that way, when I started in industry over 20 years ago, we didn't have all of these tools. And I think this is what it comes down to. And the financial industry, and I know because of regulation and compliance, have kind of downplayed the power of social media and especially LinkedIn. And really, this is where me and you, Jag, are coming together to really help advisors to build that ultimate practice, to really get more of an understanding. Not to complicate things. You say that I like using analogies. Analogies makes things simple. When we can see things in pictures. I always tell people that your business really should be as fun as you possibly can. And when you turn your business into, I call it a game or start playing games with yourself, not that, games where you take an advantage of someone, but more of a game where it becomes more fun, where it becomes more interactive.
Yes.
Right? I think everybody benefits from that, not only the advisors, but also their clients, because most advisors are really stressed, not because of all the compliance and everything and, the challenges with their families and everything. We all have all of these pressures. And I think when we find small little systems that can make things simpler for them and make it easier, and that's really at the end what systems do, is take something that's usually more complex and just says, hey, you just do step 1, 2, 3, and 4, and you're going to get this result. That's really what it all comes down to. And I think
you're providing a template for them. And, here's a template. You just fill in your situation, but this works. So here's how you do it.
And it's a process. It takes time to get through it. But again, having a system is important.
Right. So this has been a great discovery of all that you provide. And I'm really happy that we're able to do this early on in our series so that people now will have the foundation of what both of us provide, and we can get into more specifics for all of the listeners down the road.
Oh, definitely. And again, I'm looking forward to the conversations we're going to have because we've already had them off camera. Now it's time to have them and start sharing them with advisors. And I think, as you mentioned, you share a wealth of information and I love your story when we connected and you told me why did you started working with advisors. I think it was perfect. You weren't looking for it, but, you got called and you answered the call and, you working with advisors and the, services and the programs that you have is definitely helping them because they're, the stress is not going away. The overwhelm's not going away. What I'm seeing is there is a lot more that's coming and more uncertainty. And I think advisors really need to be aware of the fact that, there is help, that they don't have to do it, on their own. I think that's the biggest challenge, that a lot of advisors feel all by themselves and like there is no help.
And here's the key. They don't have to feel weak because they're asking for help. Every really good advisor I've ever met has told me they had a mentor somewhere.
Yeah.
And they didn't feel ashamed of that. They felt empowered by that. And that's what's really important. That all of our listeners need to know that it's a bonus to find someone to help you. It's not a weakness.
Well, and bonus, and it's a shortcut.
Right. Exactly.
Because when you can work with somebody that can show you something that you don't already know, I think the biggest downfall we all have, is the fact that we can only see what we can see. We all have blind sides. And the amount of success that we have achieved up to this point is exactly what's going to keep us from achieving the success we're going to achieve in the future, unless we start looking at things differently. We get a bit of a mindset shift. This is what some of the things that you're talking about. Maybe getting a strategy that you can go out there and implement and do it on a consistent basis. Those are really the keys to that second question you asked. What kind of separates the average advisor, from the really successful advisor, is that, they're open-minded to the fact that they don't know everything, that there is a lot more to learn, but they start to focus on, they don't try to do it all at once. They really try to focus on is what is the most important thing that I need to get done today, this week, this month, and they see it through.
Exactly. For example, a typical question I get is, Dr. Jack, can you mentor me? Yes, what kind of mentoring are you talking about? Well, I make plenty of money. I'm not worried about my income, okay? But I don't sleep at night, especially Sunday night when I have to go into the office the next day, and I'm difficult at home, and my wife keeps complaining about I'm irritable. So there's some kind of a side effect to making all this money. Maybe you can help me sort this out and get rid of the side effect. And that's perfect. Of course I can do that.
Yeah. No, and exactly. And this is what this whole show is all about. So I think it was an awesome conversation. I appreciate you returning the favor of me interviewing you in the first show. Now you interviewing me. And I think as we move forward, these discussions are going to become a lot more what I would call topical, where we will start looking at some real life situations that are happening, kind of like you mentioned here, because I think that is one of the things that's not going away from the perspective of advisors being stressed, advisors not knowing what to do, but sometimes knowing what to do creates even more problems. Because one of the questions I ask, anybody that's a prospective client, I ask them, if me and you start working together and we take your business and we do a 10x on it, that you're going to have 10 times more leads than you have in right now, I ask them, what's going to break first? And most of them answered, me. I can't handle that. I said, exactly. But that's what everybody's after. But they don't realize that if they actually got what they think they need, they would not be able to handle it. And most of them, a lot of successful businesses become too successful too quickly. They actually go out of business because things start to get cut down because they don't have a system of doing things. So when you look at, and I've studied, small businesses, why they went bankrupt, it wasn't necessarily that lack of business. It was actually too much business too fast. They've grown too fast, and they were not able to adapt to some of those things that that were happening.
Yeah, I can give you a great example of that has nothing to do with financial advisors. At one point, my wife, before I met her, actually had a clothing manufacturing company business where she made, T-shirts and things like that. And suddenly she landed Kmart as a client. And she went in there the first day all excited, and they looked at her samples and they said, okay, we would like to write an order for 500,000 of these. And she said, what? That would take me a year. So that's a good example. You got in too fast. You didn't plan it out carefully, and there was no way you could satisfy that requirement. Yeah.
No, and I see people doing that and using strategies to do that. Wanted to go into, I'm working with one coach, and she went into a fairly large publication for a store, and all excited I was going to get her all of these leads, worked on a website, worked on business cards and all of this. And I'm like if suddenly you had 40 people calling you, you couldn't even handle that. That's right. All right. So it's a matter of pacing in. This is where strategies comes in. Right. And getting clear on the basics, kind of build the foundation so that you can go and scale your business. And really, that's what I help advisors to do is, how do you actually look at your business and figure out where you are right now? Okay, let's look at what you're already doing, what's working, what's not working. And then let's figure out what is the next step you have to do. And the next step after that.
The topic of our next program.
Yeah, that would be perfect.
The topic of how do you look at what you have now and get to where you want to be in a logical way.
Precisely. So that'd be awesome.
Okay.
All right. Well, you know what? I know at the bottom of the video we're going to say how people can get connect with us, but why don't you just kind of say your contact information again, Jack?
Okay.
And
if they want to call me, I may not be available when they call, but I do have my own answering machine. I don't use a secretary or anything so that it's all confidential. They can reach me at 949-481-5660. or they can email me at drjack, like Dr. Jack, no period in there, at advisingtheadvisors.com. And if they're interested in my continuing education course about all of this on skills to develop the mindset of a champion advisor, they can go to www.developthemindsetofachampion.com.
Perfect. And for me, you can give me a call at 416-875-1505, or you can email me at daniel@resetyourmoney.com, and connect with both of us, with Dr. Jack and myself, on LinkedIn. Let's get a conversation going. If there's some information that we can help you with, let's go and do that. The biggest thing is just get the engagement going, and share the video, share it with other advisors. As we mentioned, we're going to make this more of a series. We're talking about putting it also on iTunes and using this as a podcast as opposed to just video. So there will be a lot more content coming from us. So keep on looking for us, and looking forward to sharing more information with you next time.